Darker Days Radio, and this is going to be episode number 72, and I am joined by Bryce. Chigg, you're there?
I'm here. Evening, Chris.
Hello. Yeah, it's evening, but it's very sunny here. And of course, I'm joined by Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing fine.
So this show, we're going to be doing finally our review of Beast the Primordial. And before we get into that, let's cover what we've been up to, and then we'll go on to White Wolf News. And we do have a secret frequency, which I think should be a good one. So, gaming-wise, what's everyone been doing? Matt?
Not much. Unfortunately, games have not materialized around me. I've been mostly doing video gaming and that sort of thing.
Okay. And what are you playing video game-wise?
The new Doom, which is surprisingly very good.
Okay.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, it's very self-aware without being joking about it. Like, it takes its own plot very seriously, but the Doom Marine doesn't. Like, right. The Doom Marine wants to stop the demon invasion, but the main antagonist is trying to basically exploit hell to get infinite energy to, keep Earth afloat. And right. So Doom Marine's like, yes, but could you have thought of a solution that didn't involve summoning demons and sacrificing demons? Just putting that out there.
Brilliant. Cool. And Chigg, what have you been doing gaming-wise?
I have not been doing anything gaming-wise. I've been spending the past several months on the road for work, so I can't do much of anything.
That's painful. For my part, what's happened? So the Journeyman League for War Machine Hordes finished at my local club, so I did pretty well in that, considering I didn't turn up to every single session. So I came a good fourth, I think, based on points on painting and winning stuff. And I've just written up last night everyone's character sheets for Geist. So there's a few little bits that need to be finished off, but that should be starting in a couple of weeks' time. And then, obviously, Kingdom Death, I've got like 3 more hunts, and that's the game over. If I can make it to the end game, which I should, my population isn't going to die in the space of that many fights. I don't think so, anyway. That would be terrible if it happened that way. And let's see. And, of course, myself and James will be heading to the UK Game Expo next Saturday, so that'll be good fun. Because we have Press Pass, so we get to go in for free, and we can go talk to people. Like Andy Chambers and other people that make some really interesting games. So I think we'll look at like the Dark Souls board game, which was recently funded on Kickstarter by Steamforged Games, who make Guild Ball. And there's a whole load of other things and some RPGs. So like Dust Adventures, I finally read the review copy I had of that. I need to write a review of it. It's okay. It's quite a thin RPG, but also interesting about that because it's Modiphius who make it. They've done a crossover book, so you can take their Achtung Cthulhu RPG and cross it over with Dust. So you can have the Dust setting, which has the alien tech kind of Walker battle suits in this alternate Weird World War 1947, and inject a bit of Cthulhu mythos into it. So that's kind of fun. They've they were allowed to do that, and that's been about it. So other than gaming news, gaming wise, what we've been up to, we should talk about White Wolf News. So, Mage the Awakening Second Edition is out. I've not read it yet. It's in pre-release PDF mode, so it's not yet on print on demand because obviously they're going to catch all the errata. Yeah, mostly the next big thing that I'll read and we can do a review of. Dark Eras is now on print on demand. The pack is out for Forsaken. Matt, have you had a look at the pack?
No, I have not.
Okay. So that should be fun to look at because that's apparently more about how the Forsaken make pacts, not just with their own kind and with their wolf-blooded kinfolk, but also how they create pacts with other supernatural entities within the world of darkness, which I think should be a really good read. Well, to a certain point, when we get to talking about our review anyway. The Black Hand Guide to the Talmahera is out as well. Is that on POD? I can't remember, but I know it's out on PDF, so that's a release that's out. And then at Gen Con, quite a number of the Onyx Path writers will be on a number of panels, including the Industry Insider. So that's Eddie Webb and Monica Valentinelli. Obviously, big names that have written on everything like Vampire the Requiem and so forth, and other games for Onyx Path. Obviously, that Industry Insider caused a whole load of headache for people because apparently it was too diverse and shock horror, feminism, whatever. But it's been well overdue to have the Industry Insider be more diverse in its representation of freelancers. And I think that's basically it for White Wolf news. There's not much else out. Nothing much that I know from White Wolf itself. No more news on any LARP stuff. And not much more that I know from Onyx Path, because any other releases have been things like Exalted or Pugmire. So I think we should then move on to our main segment, which is for Chronicles of Darkness. So, as we mentioned, for our episode today, we are reviewing Beast the Primordial, which is the most recent game line for Chronicles of Darkness. It is already out to backers. It's out so you can buy it. You can get it on POD. The Kickstarter, whichever version, I can't remember what they call the type of book. The Prestige edition, whatever, traditional print run book, is in printing already, or it's going to print. And Matt, you've read this a lot more than I even have, so it presents itself as a storytelling game of endless hunger. And as a beast, you are playing a person that has within them a soul of some ancient, well, I won't say ancient, but some primordial horror monster that fits some of the classic archetypes of things like the Gorgons, a dragon, a griffin,
Cyclops,
the Kraken, Leviathan, all those creatures which are very... They could fit into one of the already existing game lines quite easily, but they somehow have picked out the more mythological kind of monsters, the really big mythological monsters, and use them as the basis of this game. So, Matt, do you want to continue the introduction and give us the basic overview of what the game is meant to be about before we start going into the game in more detail?
All right. Well, the basic premise of Beast the Primordial is, like he said, your soul has been replaced by a horror, something from man's primordial unconscious, where all of our nightmares and fears live, has come to you in your dreams and consumed your soul. And now you have to continue feeding it the horror and fear of other people, otherwise it will go out on its own and do that, usually to the people close to you, indiscriminately. And there's different kinds of things you can hunger for, that your horror can hunger for. You can hunger for power over other people. You can hunger for things like, the archetypical dragon sitting atop its hoard. You can hunger for prey, like hunting people down, hunting animals down. You can hunger for revenge against people who have broken rules, either yours or that of society. And you can hunger for just general destruction, ripping things apart, destroying buildings, etc. Their antagonists in this are heroes, who are people who can also sense the primordial dream, but rather than seeing, horrors and nightmares and having their souls replaced, they can instead see the effect that beasts are having on the dream, and they try to stop them. Which, on its own, just from that high-level perspective, that's not a bad game. The problem is that that's not where it stops.
Yeah. Okay, so the game is trying to invert the classic balance between a monster and its hunter, and it draws upon ideas of like the beasts that Hercules obviously fought against in all of his legendary exploits, or say the conflict between the Beast and Gaston in Beauty and the Beast. That Gaston is hunting the Beast, is wanting to be the hero, but obviously is not a very nice person, and the Beast as well, because he's beastly, is not very nice, but for very different reasons. They have their issues, and there's this balance between them that has to be addressed. So, I mean, Matt, where do you want to begin with this? Because there's a lot to cover. Let's start off with the things that I think that stick out quite interesting. Let's talk about the primordial dream and what that's meant to, why beasts are attached to it, and what the primordial dream's relationship is to humanity. Because then I think that gives us more of a basis for where beasts then fit into things.
Well, according to the book, which, it's kind of dumb, but the idea set forth by the book was back when humanity was young and living in very small hunter-gatherer tribes, someone would, like before the advent of language even, someone would see a monster in the darkness, and they would not be able to express to a person, there is something in the darkness, it will eat you. So this kind of gestalt consciousness existed between humanity, where like one person would see something and that fear would translate to another person, and that is how humanity survived, was through these fears that just kind of became a part of humanity through the primordial dream. But as humanity grew too numerous, the old World of Darkness shtick, oh no, we grew too big, now bad things happen. Now people can't hear the primordial dream, we no longer recognize these horrors and these fears. And so what happened was, some people who could still dream deep, is the term they use, into the primordial dream, had their souls devoured so that the hungers could be brought closer to our world, and these fears could be propagated through humanity again.
Yeah. So it's meant to be the fear of...
Problem I have...
I was going to say, so it's meant to be... The primordial dream is meant to somehow exchange between the Gestalt, shared dream, which, I mean, that's kind of related to some of the things that's in Changeling and Mage, especially Mage. So they're sharing the idea of a conceptual idea of things that they should fear, and those could be other supernatural creatures as well, or even just normal creatures that they should obviously fear. So I guess if the natural fear of when these ancient hunter-gatherers, say, came into contact with a saber-toothed tiger or something, that fear of it in the primordial dream would eventually come together as some sort of conceptual fear that they then know as like the chimera or some other, or the lion beast that Hercules fought against. Is that the basic? Would you say a good way of explaining that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And again, in and of itself, that's not a bad concept. How they actually go about teaching these lessons. And they do so by scaring the shit out of people. And in not very subtle ways, because the only real tool that beasts have at their disposal are fear and nightmares.
Yeah.
And that's not really going to be useful for getting about more subtle concepts like, how to do a pivot table in Excel, or how to do a programming language, or how to drive a car. Like, they could, do a nightmare about you getting in a car crash and be like, you need to learn to drive a car, otherwise you're going to, die horribly in a wreck. But all that does is like the motivation for them to go out and do something else. And beasts do that by terrorizing people. Like, they are fueled by people being horrified so much they lose integrity. Like, they're actively making people, less confident, more integrity isn't morality.
Yeah.
But low integrity people are usually less well put together, less sure of themselves, more likely to do bad things because they don't have that kind of conscious moral fiber going through them, that kind of thing. And so beasts are they're imparting these lessons, and they're making people worse, and they don't really need to impart the lessons anyway, because the book admits as much, that parents and schools now say, don't put your hand on the stove, don't approach wild animals, things like that. Like, those kinds of lessons aren't necessary in our society anymore, but beasts do it anyway because that's what they do.
Yeah, I would say the example lessons in the book are all come across as very shallow and petty. Like, some are like trying to say something that to warn a person about toxic relationships, maybe within their own family or something like that. But I'm more surprised that the lessons that the example lessons won't say the beast showing that humanity has forgotten that the other monsters are out there and that they should fear them. So, it would have made more sense if the beasts were preying on the fears that humans should have about, vampires and werewolves and those things, because those creatures are in the world of darkness, they are in hidden societies, and they are still plaguing humanity to a certain degree. That would have been more interesting, but we don't get that.
Well, predators sort of do that, but the book never actually calls them out on doing that.
Right.
And the other issue that I have is that, again, all these teachings of lessons and things like that was added very late in Beast's development cycle. They were added as a response to complaints earlier in the cycle that Beast, before all this, Beast didn't impart lessons. Beasts just existed. They were from the primordial dream. They fed by terrorizing people, and that's it. Beasts just did that. That's what beasts did. And now there's this very shallow justification in the book about how beasts, as a society, even though they don't really have a society, decided that they need to teach people lessons, because if they don't teach lessons, then they're just monsters. And it's no, because you are monsters.
Yeah.
That's kind of a very meta thing about the game, though, right? Because that was the initial complaint. If they don't have anything to do, then why do they exist? So they said, oh, well, they teach lessons because otherwise they have no reason.
Right. No, that's a big problem with this game, is there's a lot of things that diegetically make no sense. There's no reason for beasts to do this except for the fact that this was a complaint in the Kickstarter copy, and therefore this has to be true. The book says this is true with no justification for why it's true. There's no explanation for why this happens. It's just the way it is, because it has to be that way. Otherwise, the game has no reason to exist. And if you have to add things like that and not even provide a baseline explanation for why they exist, then that shows a problem with the game.
It reminds me um, in kind of a sideways way of the old World of Darkness or classic World of Darkness or whatever it's called this week, Changeling, the Dreaming, um, because these are creatures from an earlier time. Their time is very very clearly drawing to a close, but for some reason, I mean, aside from just self-preservation, they're still holding on and looking for some way to survive in the modern world.
Yeah.
Did anybody else get that, or is that just me
No,
reading my favorite game line into everything?
I think a lot of people have made the comparison between Beast and Changeling
Old.
Dreaming.
Oh, it kind of makes me scared for the Changeling 20th edition, to be honest with you.
Well, we'll just say briefly, Changeling 20th edition. I don't think you have to be scared in the way that it's going to be that it's not going to be modernized, because isn't Changeling 20th anniversary meant to be the revised edition it never had?
Yes,
So,
it is, but
that,
I'm more concerned about the storyline and the themes than
oh well.
more.
Anyway,
That's just me. Back to our review.
So the teaching of lessons seems slapped on. Though apparently, did they say that the teaching of lessons comes from the Dark Mother?
No, the Dark Mother doesn't give two shits about lessons.
Good.
The
Okay.
Dark Mother just wants terror and horror to exist because that's what the Dark Mother. Okay, we should probably go over what that is. The Dark
Yes.
Mother is supposedly the ancestral progenitor of all horrors and therefore all beasts. No one knows what she is, no one knows why she exists, but she does. And sometimes she is the one who initiates a beast's devouring when their horror consumes their soul, supposedly. But the Dark Mother is just a thing that may or may not exist, probably exists, and is supposedly the progenitor of all horrors, all nightmares, and all supernatural creatures.
So far, I would say that, along with the lessons, it's all just a shared kind of. It's all kind of a shared mythology that helps beasts reconcile why they even exist in the world that doesn't need them anymore.
Right. But the problem is that the idea of them needing to teach lessons is completely at odds with every single example character given in the book.
Yeah.
Every
Okay.
single one. Like, I could just pick one at random and decide and just read it from you. Because, Bryce, you haven't read the book, right?
I have not read the entirety of the book, no.
Okay, so let me
I
just
did begin
read
reading it.
Shall we get to the examples once we've gone through some of the other introductory bits? Because I think then a lot of the examples will be framed better, maybe.
Sure.
Okay, so let's talk about the horror. Okay, because we've talked about the horror devours a person's soul. So the horror is this creature that exists in the primordial dream. It likes going into people's nightmares and terrorizing them and feeding on their fears that way. And that's about it. And the act of a horror eating someone's soul is known as the devouring, or at least it's known as the devouring now. It wasn't always known as that in the initial version.
Okay, that's another thing. Okay, when the first Kickstarter drafts went out, beasts were not made, they were born. Like, you were born a beast, but you had some, like, a placeholder human soul in you.
Yeah.
And at some point, your horror found your soul. It's your beast soul. It wasn't called a horror then. It was your soul had the homecoming, where it came, ate the soul that was in its place, and you became whole. The idea of an adolescent revenge fantasy having the part where you come to power known as the homecoming strikes me as kind of hilarious in hindsight, because the nerdy beast that was always picked on by the jocks never had a homecoming, but now they do.
Yeah. So, we can continue on from that, because the devouring, as it's explained, as you said, now is a beast isn't born a beast, and they but they are still, as a human, they are still somewhat different because they have a connection to a greater or lesser degree to the primordial dream, in that they dream deep and they wake up with sweating from their nightmares, but they seem wiser for it, whatever that wisdom that's been imparted is. And they then either have a devouring that occurs just spontaneously,
A
or
horror just ascends from the dream and consumes them because they dream deep and have attracted the attention.
yeah,
Or another
a-
beast finds them, notices them, and devours their soul, and that causes a horror to spontaneously generate and take its place.
yeah. And the thing that's kind of weird is that also later in the book, when it talks more about the devouring, it also says that for some of the beasts, this is like a homecoming. So while they got rid of the concept of the homecoming, they still sneak it back in.
Right, and as you mentioned, only a specific kind of person can become a beast. And the book goes into great length that this specific kind of person is always picked on in high school, is always seen as different, and is always never quite fit in, just the same way that old beasts were doing that sort of thing.
Yeah. So either you were bullied, you were abused, you had problems with your family because you didn't fit in with your mortal family, or you were neglected by society in some manner, or all manner of ways in which you feel you as a person were slighted. Whether you were slighted because you were, or because, I mean, is there not a danger that a beast could be slighted and they weren't? Do you think? I don't know whether it even suggests that a beast could just be, well, could a person not have strong connections with other people because they're not a nice person, even though they're a beast?
Well,
Or
no,
will
the
be?
thing is that it doesn't really even bother going into that kind of detail because that was the person you were before, and that person doesn't matter. It's
Yeah,
just that since you have this connection to the primordial dream, you have these really deep nightmares. They color your perceptions on things, and occasionally you have dreams about other people, and you think like, oh, Jilly's in an abusive relationship. I have to tell her that her boyfriend is a terrible person. She needs to break up with him, and that distances themselves from people. Like, why don't people understand that I'm trying to help them when I meddle in their lives?
yeah. Okay. So that's the devouring we've got into, and then the as we said, the horror exists in the primordial dream, and the primordial dream is, that means where the horror is, it has a lair, and this lair is where is essentially the seat of the beast's soul in this other realm, and it's made up of a number of chambers, and as these chambers increase in number, as they increase in, that represents an increase in the beast's power. It represents their personality and experiences, and these chambers are also added by connecting to places in the real world where some supernatural terror occurred.
Specifically, a place where a mortal human has lost a point of integrity.
Yeah,
That shock of a soul being destroyed is what creates chambers in the primordial dream. The fact that beasts use these moments to gain more power should tell you everything you need to know about them, yet somehow it doesn't.
that's almost like a beast is. I mean, when it says those locations where integrity is lost and something horrible has happened, that's quite similar to what are they called in Werewolf the Forsaken? The places where there's negative psychological resonance that's caused in the spirit realm.
Light?
Blights is one, yeah, and things like that. I mean, essentially, a beast is also looking for places that are brimming with places that are brimming with spirits of terror and fear. But we'll get to that later
Well, the
about
thing
how.
is that beasts don't really interact with spirits directly,
No.
unless they are like beasts never acknowledges really that that sort of thing happens. It doesn't really care about it that much. It cares about dreams and astral forms a whole bunch, but doesn't really interact with spirits because beasts don't go into the umbra or the
Yeah.
shadow or whatever.
The Hissel, yeah. Okay, is there anything more to say about layers?
Well, one thing that beasts can do is that layers have traits, like things that describe bits of the beast's preferred home, like the dark, and these are traits that can be added to scenes like tags. So they've got like the darkness trait, the darkness, cramped, rushing water, hot, literally on fire, things like that.
Yeah.
And beasts can use their ability they can pull parts of their lair into the real world, depending on like how closely it resembles. Like basically, there is no reason why any beast should not have darkness as a lair trait, because making someplace dark is super easy to do, and then you can tag that to bring your entire lair in.
Yeah. Okay. So, so we've got beasts have these horrors that exist in them that are tied to the primordial dream, and that the lair is a measure of the horror's power. But also, beasts have a drive to feed on fear and terror, and that is the hunger. Now, there's again in the book it presents different things that beasts can hunger for. And this then colours the type of terrors and nightmares they create. You want to talk about that any more, Matt? Because they're a bit, I don't know. They can sometimes be overly specific and sometimes not very specific. The examples they give.
That's a problem that I noticed, is that you think you didn't go over with horrors, that there are different kinds of horrors.
Oh yeah, of course,
like,
yes.
There are the Anakim, which are giants, like things like the Cyclops or just anything huge, and they represent the fear of powerlessness, like the idea that you are not the strongest person, there is someone that is stronger than you. Then you have the Eshmaki,
yes,
who are the fear of something in the darkness that you can't see. Like
yes.
They tend to be things like the idea of there is a monster in the dark and I can't see it. Their types of horrors tend to be rather indistinct creatures or shadowy predators, wolves, those kinds of things.
Yeah, night terrors, the classic, something sat on your chest. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Then there's the Makara, which are nightmares in the deeps. like drowning, things like that, but they're like the Krakens who live deep in the deep. They are Cilia. They are the whale from Jonah and the Whale.
Yeah.
They're sirens, yeah.
Okay.
Then you have the Namtaru, which are the nightmares of revulsion. They're the swarm of bugs, they're Medusa, they're anything that is ugly and you don't like. Which, to say that ugliness is terrifying is kind of a moral judgment, and also not something you probably want to put into a game. But
I would say, yeah, ugliness is a bit weird as a term. There, I think it should definitely just be revulsion of things that are kind of like unnatural revulsion, or revulsion to do with like of the person that's made of maggots, or that weird sensation that people can have when they look at beehives. Because all the hexens, there's that phobia of looking at that,
right,
and stuff like that. That would make more sense. Putting in ugly seems really like, oh, you're scared of ugly people. Wow.
Okay, just to be the devil's advocate here, because someone has to, I guess.
No one has to.
In the old world of darkness, Nosferatu have an appearance of zero. They are the ugly vampires. That is that is part of their shtick.
And
that's the only thing they have going for them.
There's a reason why we don't have those Nosferatus in Nosferatu and Requiem as a default anymore.
Just saying, they still make Vampire the Masquerade. Nosferatu are still the ugly guys.
Maybe they need to not make Vampire the Masquerade anymore.
And Vampire the Masquerade still has Ravnos, which are the evil gypsy stealing vampires.
This
And
It
Lure of
does.
the Apocalypse still has the Fianna, which are the drunken Irish vampires, and the magical Native American werewolves, now in 3 different flavors.
I think
Yes.
they're all magical Native American werewolves, if you get right down to it.
Anyways, the final.
I'm just saying, there's historic precedent for this.
of being edgelords, yeah. Anyway, yeah, go on, Matt.
The final type of horror is the Ugalu, which are nightmares of exposure, both literal and figurative. Like the idea of being caught with your deepest, darkest secrets revealed, or dying out somewhere cold and alone without food or water.
Mm.
They are the flying creatures. They are dragons, large raptors, anything that would attack you from above.
Yeah.
Being eclipsed by a large shadow and dying not seeing what happened to you, those are the Ugalu.
Yes.
Now, the problem is that we get into the various hungers. And we have the tyrants, which have a hunger for power. Why aren't they just the Anakim? Like,
Yes.
that's the thing, like, the hunger for power is basically just the Anakim, except anybody can have a hunger for power. Then you have the hunger for prey, the predators. Why aren't those the Eshmaki? You have...
Because sometimes a giant wants to eat some dude. Come on,
Right,
man.
I know, but the problem is that the hungers don't actually give you any kind of mechanical benefit or penalty. All the hungers do is color what kind of feeding you should do, but then you get into the feeding chapters, and that gets even more specific about what you're supposed to do, and it gets really kind of confusing and redundant
Yeah.
about what you're actually supposed to be doing with the characters in the game.
So, as I said, so we've got tyrants, which are the hunger for power. And,
Collectors, which are hunger for the horde.
Yeah.
Predators, which are the hunger for prey. Then you have nemesis,
Nemesis,
which are the
yeah.
hungers for punishment. And the ravagers, which are hunger for ruin and destruction.
Yeah. And as you said, like when you read through these, there is in that section there is no mechanical benefit or anything. It's all flavor, and
The hungers provide flavor, you say?
yeah. It just and it gives you examples of the lessons that they prefer to teach.
Well, no, like this is, well, yeah, like the lessons were added late and they're kind of really shallow.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the hunger for punishment is like, these lessons are self-evident. As these guys punish people for breaking laws, that should be a lesson in and of itself. And it's like, really? Okay. And, like, the Predator lessons are, they teach mortality. Like, congratulations, game. I don't think people forget that they're going to die.
Mm.
It's a lesson that they really only need to learn that one time.
Well,
So,
and that's
I mean-
another thing is that the game goes over, is that there's a lot of beasts who it's like, oh, well, you accidentally killed someone. But if you leave their corpse somewhere public, someone will learn a lesson, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And
Also, yeah, Ravager's hunger for ruin, life is chaos, death strikes at any moment. I think you only have to look at the modern world to know life is chaos.
this is also where we have the example characters, though.
Oh, right, yeah, okay. Go on then.
All right, Bryce, just tell me if you think that this is a compelling character. Reynolds is a health inspector for the city. Most of the time, he does his job without complaint, but sometimes
Please tell me he
finds
turns into a pile of maggots. Please, please, please.
it doesn't even tell you that.
Ah.
But sometimes he finds the places where horrible things have happened and left stains. Then he finds those responsible and makes them clean up their mess. Human offenders are simple. Supernatural ones take a different kind of approach. Reynolds doesn't mind the work. He doesn't judge others for making the mess, just leaving the stains behind.
There's really not a lot there to go by. How exactly does he what exactly does he do to make them clean up the mess?
It doesn't say. Here's another
I get
one.
that. I get that that's everything there. What I'm saying is there's no there. You know, there's There's like, the barest hint of an outline of a character thought of an idea, but then there's no follow through.
Here's another one. Ari drives a cab. He goes to the parts of the city where the other cabbies won't. He knows every bit of the city, the poor neighborhoods where everyone looks out for each other, and the rich neighborhoods where everyone's a stranger. When he feels his hunger, he picks someone up and drops them off in a place the person's never seen before, a place where just walking down the street will get him arrested or jumped. He never lets anyone die, he just wants each little fish to know how far from its home pond it has strayed.
That is slightly more compelling a character than the first one.
There's also the assistant principal who scares people with a pet scorpion.
Yeah.
There's the guy who got his MBA and is trying to become get the top floor at his office. That's literally his entire motivation. Somehow he feeds from that.
Doesn't that just seem rather pointless for an entity that doesn't have a human soul anymore? That it cares about something as petty as something so human. Anyway.
I was going to say that sounds very fitting for someone without a human soul.
Oh no! Here's another one. Most collectors hide their riches away from the world. Not Nigel. He takes, quote unquote, acquires, if anyone asks, heirlooms, antique clothing, and items of historical significance, and then he defiles them. He smears the hand-stitched clothing with blood and shit, and carves deep uneven furrows in the furniture, then puts them all on display by the side of the road under a banner that reads "Sic Transit Gloria Mundi."
Yeah, the collector is one that I really just cannot get my head around at all. So the way that you teach lessons is you hoard stuff, you take things, you hold on to it.
You take things that other people want, and therefore teach them that they shouldn't want those things.
It's the dumbest thing I've heard in a while, and there's a lot of dumb things here to go over, but that's a really dumb one.
No, there's one of the ones that really, really pisses me off is this one right here. Patrick and Ahmed are a Makara collector and a Makara nemesis, respectively, who fell in love. Patrick placed his treasures at the bottom of Ahmed's lake, and Ahmed resolved to punish all those who would dare to steal his lover's hoard. People come to the lake almost every week looking to dive down and take the abandoned treasure. Of course, Patrick makes sure to spread the rumors about the treasure. That way people come looking, and his lover gets to punish them. So they're
Why is it not just one dude?
What?
Why is it not just one dude? Why is it not just one person? Why is this a tag team?
Because they're gay.
Okay, I get that. I get that they're being inclusive there. I got that part. But the part is, how is that not just the job of one of the beasts? I hoard stuff, and if someone comes to take it away from me, I eat them. How is that not one dude's job?
The thing that really annoys me about this is that they're punishing people for crimes that they would not normally do had they not been convinced to do them by the other person.
Yeah, they're the FBI. I get it.
But yeah, it's like that's the thing. Is like all of the example characters here are really petty, and they don't teach lessons because these were basically all written before they even thought of lessons, and few, if any of them, have had any editing whatsoever. This is back when beasts just killed people and made their lives miserable because they existed, and that was okay.
Yeah. I think that's
Do you think that would have been a better game?
It would have at least been honest to itself. I think that's the point. Is like, that? Go on, Matt.
Well, I've said it before, and I'll say it again now that we're recording. Is that if Beast owned up to itself, if Beasts owned up to their monstrosity and didn't care, it would have been a much better game. Like the idea of, I'm a monster, you don't have to like it, but I don't have to care that you don't like it, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And if someone tries to kill me, so what? I'll kill them. I'm not going to moralize about it because I don't have morals. But this game moralizes about it a whole bunch. Let's talk about heroes.
I was about to say, would that not have invalidated the concept of heroes?
Well, see, that's the problem with the game, is that in the original Kickstarter copy, heroes didn't start out the way they started out. The idea was that each and every hero had been touched by a beast in some way, either by a beast refusing to feed and their horror went out and created a hero for them to fight to force the beast to feed, or a beast did something really, really terrible to somebody and turned them into a hero when they survived. And the idea is that all heroes have low integrity. Like, they have to have an integrity of 3 or less. And according to the game, that makes them horrible people. But as several people pointed out, when you are turned into a horrible person because a beast fucked with your life repeatedly to the point that your integrity went down to 3, that's not really your fault. And that's actually a sympathetic character.
Yeah.
We can't have that. So, beasts were revised in the new version. Heroes were revised in the new version. Now heroes just exist. Like, they are born with a very broad understanding of the primordial dream, and they can see the scars that beasts leave on it. And that makes heroes jealous, because people should be talking about how great he is. So they go out and they kill beasts and try to make everybody talk about how great they are.
Yeah, I mean, there was only the only real nugget in anything to do with the hero-beast relationship was everything to do with when apparently in ancient times, you had the beasts were teaching some primordial, primal lesson that's actually more important than any of the shit we've read, and then the wise men would come along and help the community understand that lesson. And it says that, but then what we get is we don't really get any nuance about why that's being forgotten, and all we get is these are heroes, they're evil because they come along and try and stamp on your fun as a beast. Oh, but except for the ones that have got high integrity, and
yes,
we're not allowed those in the game.
Yeah, the game specifically says that there are heroes who have high integrity. Those heroes are not interesting characters because they acknowledge that beasts serve a purpose and don't interfere in their lives. Therefore, do not make high integrity heroes.
Even though it says beasts serve a purpose, even though the purpose that beasts serve is superfluous and anachronistic, and is also in many respects beast society trying to give an excuse for why beasts exist in the world today.
And this is one of those times where there seems to be a rule written so that the game can exist and isn't really diegetically justified within the game itself. Because you know how I said earlier that integrity can be lost for any reason?
Yeah.
This is what the book says. It is possible to lose integrity from exposure to the supernatural, but this by itself doesn't usually reduce the trait low enough to qualify a person for becoming a hero. Thematically, too, it's not appropriate for someone whose only crime was bearing witness to the supernatural to go out and become a violent narcissist. If such a character is going to go out and seek the supernatural, it should probably be in a different context than strapping on a sword and a gun. Since heroes are storyteller-controlled characters, you as a storyteller dictate why the hero is the way he is. So make choices that allow the hero to fulfill the appropriate role in the story. If the hero is a sympathetic character, driven to hunt monsters by the relentless attacks of the supernatural, then you might be better served by checking out Hunter the Vigil, and perhaps using the beasts as antagonists. If, however, the hero has deliberately shunned other people, defining himself by what he is not and what he hates and the wrongs done to him, that's a perfect candidate for a hero. The line is thin, and that's deliberate. No, the line is not thin. You just specifically stated heroes should not be sympathetic in any way.
Which is like the worst type of villain ever, other than trying to... The only time you don't want your antagonists to be unsympathetic is if the antagonists are so alien that you as players, playing people that are meant to be somewhat human to lesser or greater degree, cannot even begin to understand the reasoning for why this entity is doing what it's doing. That to me is the only time when you can't sympathize with something and it should be presented as such. But for a hero, it's still human, so trying to say it's not sympathetic is ridiculous.
Well, and they're more human than beasts because they still have the integrity stat.
And they still have a human soul.
Right.
Can we talk
And
about the example hunters or heroes rather in the book and how
give,
ridiculous they are?
give me a second. I want to finish something.
Okay.
Oh my God, they're so ridiculous.
I know they are, but let me finish, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. I want
Well,
to skip
I was
ahead.
just going to say the idea that, like, when Beast came out, the way that heroes were presented, like not the example heroes, because as Bryce said, they are terrible, but the way that Beast heroes were presented were great. Like the idea that they are the example of everything that is wrong with beasts, and that beasts still have to kill heroes, but it's not the hero's fault. Like the idea of that sympathetic protagonist was the one part of the game that most people genuinely liked. But if your game can't survive having a sympathetic antagonist because of how terrible your protagonists are, then your game doesn't need to exist. Or you need to just admit that you are playing the bad guys.
Yeah. Okay. So, which page are all the are the hero examples on?
It's 200 and something.
Is it in
I'll
the
go to
story?
the index.
216. 216. Oh man.
Okay, so let's briefly talk about the hero examples, and then we're trying to move on to another.
Let's skip the first one, because the first one wasn't in the original Kickstarter copy.
And he's kind of boring.
Well, the first example character, I guess, is an ex-Navy SEAL that retired and kept having nightmares about beasts and reluctantly rejoined the fight to try and protect other people. Like, the idea, like, he isn't really presented in the way that the heroes in the book are supposed to be. Like, he doesn't sound like he's really egotistical.
Also, he has the highest, I believe, integrity of any of them.
Yes, he's
Yeah, he actually has an
5.
integrity of 5, which isn't supposed to be possible.
Yeah, so yeah, he is the character who should have been in Hunter the Vigil.
Yes. I was going to say he's Hunter the Vigil, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have the Milady.
Yes. Thaddeus Pearson. His character quote is, "Never fear, milady, I've come to kill this foul beast."
Literally, he is the Milady. He only needs a trilby in his picture to be perfect.
Description. Thaddeus is a tall, skinny man in his mid-30s, clean-shaven with pale skin and neatly cut hair. During
Thaddeus.
Yeah. Wearing office hours, he wears business casual polo shirts and slacks and is simply unremarkable. While out hunting monsters, he wears a poorly fitted trench coat and a black trilby hat.
There it is!
Thaddeus considers himself a modern gentleman and speaks with an unnecessarily verbose vocabulary dotted with chivalric language he's mostly picked up from fantasy movies and novels.
So much garbage wish fulfillment.
And it gets even better because, where is it? Coming from a middle-class suburban home, he was told all through his childhood that he was special. When the real world failed to reinforce this, he retreated into whatever fiction he could find that said that bookish kids like him would eventually inherit the earth. Once it became clear to Thaddeus that he was destined to work a mediocre job for the rest of his life, the resentment started. He'd been promised so much more than this: vast riches, adoring fans, and a beautiful wife who would fawn over his genius.
And then his soul was eaten by a primordial beast, and he became a collector. Oh wait, no, he's the bad guy. I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah, he's just a terrible person. He's an MRA incel who is mad that women won't sleep with him, and so he goes out and kills beasts.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to let that hang there for a moment. This is supposed to be the antagonist of the game.
Can we move on to the church lady now?
Yeah. The next character is Marion Jones, who is just a stay-at-home mother who is really religious and thinks that her son was taken in by the devil's music, and actually he turned into a beast, but she killed him, and now she looks out for other people who have fallen into quote-unquote sin. So
I bet he also played that D&D's.
Oh yeah.
So all the hero examples, except for maybe that first one, are wish fulfillment characters,
Well, no,
right? They're wish fulfillment bad.
Well, no, and that's the other problem. The last one is fine, but the problem is that she was sympathetic, and that could not stand. This character it's a
Oh yeah.
it's a teenage girl named Melody who has been trapped in a coma for the past 2 years because at some point a horror entered her dream to feed, and rather than just cowering like a good little girl and good humans are supposed to just take it from the beasts, she fought back. She chased the monster to its lair and killed it. But now she's trapped in the primordial dream and she can't get back to her body. Well, so she's basically hunting monsters in the dream, trying to get back to the real world so she can live again.
Let's just pause a minute and say that's freaking awesome.
It's a really awesome character concept. This is the best one.
She's an enemy that exists purely within the dream realm, and if the only way to kill her is to kill her physical form or her in the dream realm, well, you can't kill her in the dream realm because she's mostly shit-hot powerful because she's been there for so long. Whereas you could have asked, do I want to kill this person in a coma? It's such a wonderful moral quandary when the reason why she's chasing beasts is because it's a nightmare horror that goes around terrorizing people in their dreams, and she's there to stop it. She's brilliant.
Right. And everybody said, wow, this is a great character. More heroes should be like this. That could not stand. People on the forums caught wind that people actually liked Melanie, and they started doxing her. Quote, actually, someone else pointed out that really, really interesting for Melanie's stat blocks. First of all, she has Integrity 3. That doesn't mean anything by itself, but then look at her social skills. We get empathy, finding insecurities. Her character write-up doesn't say that, but from that it sounds like a whole hell of a lot that she was the sort of bully you'd expect to become a hero. That doesn't mean she deserves what happened to her, but it suggests that, yeah, she probably was a horrible person before she became a hero.
So she had it coming.
Yes.
Great.
She also has the substitute specialty putting on a brave face, which shades the possibilities of her unrevealed history, including the finding insecurity specialty in Integrity 3. Also, all the beasts she killed had nothing to do with what happened to her. A good person wouldn't kill them.
Hold on. She's not killing beasts, she's killing horrors. So she doesn't see their mortal form, generally, right?
Right.
She's hunting the nightmare creatures that are invading other people's dreams. You ever think the reason she's got Integrity 3 is because her integrity is being eroded, her sanity is being eroded, because she's been cut off from her...
Clearly that cannot be the case because it says earlier in the book that cannot be the case, Chris. Come on now. Come on.
Yeah,
right there.
And the thing is that in response to all these people saying that she sounded like a sympathetic character and everything what all heroes should be, this is what they added in the final version. It's even possible that Melanie should, by rights, have become a beast, but is trapped and lost out of reach of her horror. Therefore, any good beast should finish the devouring and turn her into a player character.
Oh, wonderful. So turn her into the very thing that she fought against because she didn't want to become one. That's really gross.
You know what? If this character had been like the entire game, this would have been a much better game.
Yes. And actually, at this point, I'm going to note that David Hill's writing the bit for the Mortal Remains Hunter group that ties in with Beast. They're basically dream warriors and go out hunting beasts. And when I read the write-up, I went, these guys are great because they have a really good reason. They're basically this character turned into an entire hunter cell or hunter conspiracy.
I would play the hell out of that.
Yeah.
I would play that 10 times a day before I played Beast.
They're born out of the Dream Warriors. It's kind of like, well, you basically kind of taking the idea that beasts, or at least the horrors, are kind of like, that Freddy Krueger type creature. Or, for example, the demonic entities in oh shit, let me think. What's the name of the film? Insidious. Because again, there's a lot of you go off and wander the outer dark. Anyway, Matt. Oh, Christ.
Well, and the problem here is one that I've noticed is that there are all they changed heroes to just be born. just like beasts were sort of now always just born, but not really, because we have to at least pay lip service to the people who are angry about the Kickstarter copy. And heroes kill people who don't really deserve it, except so do beasts. And there's all sorts of these other uncomfortable parallels about heroes. Like, one of the powers that heroes have is that they can place anathema on beasts and force them to adhere to the heroic narrative. Like, they can say, "Oh, beast, I have discovered a chink in your armor. Now I can, inflict more damage upon you by attacking that point." Or, "This weapon has been forged from, meteorite iron and therefore can kill you." Or, "This cross was forged from the wood of the house where you were born and I can kill you with this." Like, those kinds of things. Like, they can force the beast to suddenly desire, a woman somewhere. Like, they can force them to adhere to that heroic narrative and act like the beast the hero knows they are.
Yeah.
And beasts can do the same thing. They can inflict nightmares on people and hit them with all sorts of conditions and tilts and force them to adhere to the narrative that the beast wants to have happen. But when the beasts do it, that's good and right. When the hero does it, it's because they're a villain. The game never, ever really addresses the fact that heroes do the same thing beasts do, but beasts are justified because the game is written from the point of view of the beasts.
I kind of like heroes better.
Almost everybody did.
Okay, good.
But since we're talking about anathema, we should probably talk about feeding, because they're directly related.
Should definitely talk about feeding. It's almost dinner time.
Well, okay. The thing about beasts is that they don't have a morality stat. What they have is a satiety stat, which determines how well fed they are. It goes from 0 to 10, like most morality stats go, but it's supposed to fluctuate quite a bit over the course of play, because not only is it how well fed you are, you can spend points from satiety to power your abilities. At the higher points of satiety, you have less ability to inflict your horror in the mortal world, but you have more power over your nightmares. At low satiety, you have more physical abilities, because your horror is hungry and wants food now, and less ability to actually mess around with people's dreams. If you stay at low satiety too long, you end up, your horror will try and go out and feed itself, and that can cause nightmares and things like that, which can cause problems and doesn't really work out all that well.
Why does that cause problems? I don't understand. Why do you if you're a monster and you want to wreck stuff, why do you care?
Well, because you're supposed to care.
Why? What
Well,
what in the game makes me want to give a damn about oh no, I'm causing issues? That's kind of my job, isn't it?
well, the issue is that when your beast goes out and feeds by itself, it isn't quote-unquote feeding well, and it leaves scars in the primordial dream and can attract heroes.
Uh-huh.
Because you're supposed to not want to attract heroes. But at middle satiety, nothing really happens, but if you're at the middle satiety, that's when heroes can inflict anathema on you. So sitting in the middle is a really bad idea. The problem is that the way the game is designed, you get a lot of experience points for going back and forth between the two extremes a whole hell of a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you get an experience point for each satiety. You get a beat for each satiety you spend going from 6 down to 4. And you get a beat for resolving the conditions and going to different levels of satiety.
Okay.
But
I don't know, it just seems a little tacked on, and this happened because we want it to happen that way.
Well, because like I was saying, is that if you ever lose all of your satiety entirely, you go ravenous, and that then all sorts of really bad things happen. Let me look up the list. Here we go. You cannot spend willpower except in pursuit of satiety. When faced with a chance to regain satiety, you must comply. But easy, low satiety meals don't fulfill you. You do not gain willpower normally. You may only regain willpower by taking actions that would replenish satiety at a low level. To actually resolve each day that passes without replenishing a dot of satiety causes you a level of lethal damage that you cannot heal while you are still ravenous. And you can't heal any damage except for bashing normally while you're ravenous. And you also can't use nightmares while you're ravenous.
Okay, so if I'm a hoarding beast and I hunger for rare whatever, and I'm at 0 satiety, I can't spend willpower and I take physical damage every day. I don't get a rare like two-headed penny or whatever.
Well, no, because the thing is that the way it's supposed to work is that you don't hunger for rare two-headed pennies. You hunger for like rare-ish coins. But when you're starving, you don't care. Your horror will take anything. You can just steal money. But the problem is to actually resolve the condition, you need to fulfill an action that has a satiety potential of 8 or more, which requires us to go look at how you actually feed. And I can go do that now, but actually pulling that off requires a lot of planning, which you normally
Which you can't do because you're at low satiety.
Because you're at low satiety and you can't really think all that well. Or just straight up murdering someone. Because killing someone in pursuit of your satiety bumps up the potential by 4 points.
Right. So if I'm the stereotypical dragon who collects gold, all I have to do is mug someone and beat them to death for their wristwatch. And hey, problem solved. Is that the story that I'm hearing here?
I'd have to go look at the potential, but like you'd have to do some other stuff, like dragging them back to your lair and all sorts of other things. But yeah, like you have to do a whole that's my major problem with the idea of, oh no, don't worry, beasts are, okay people and whatnot, because if you go down to low satiety, your horror is just going to go out and ruin someone's day for you because you aren't going to do it yourself. And if you actually get down to 0, you're probably going to have to kill someone to get out to survive. And there are some anathema that are resolved by going down to ravenous. Like you have to go down to ravenous and resolve it to clear the anathema condition. There are other ones that are resolved by going up to slumbering, which requires you to go up to 10 satiety. And the problem with that is you can't gain satiety unless the feeding potential of your meal would be higher than your current satiety. So if you're sitting at 8, you have to do something at level 9 or higher. And you roll the dice of your feeding potential to determine how many points you get. So if you are above 4, you probably shouldn't be feeding, because you're probably going to go up too high and go into slumbering.
But I thought slumber was only at 10.
It is.
So that means that you have at least 5 between your 4 feeding. So you get level 5, level 6, level 7, level 8, unless you can jump multiple levels at a time.
You can, but if you're at 4 or 5, you're probably safe. But if you're at 7, you would need to roll 8 dice. And you're probably going to get more than 3 successes. If you can manage to get an exceptional success, you can choose to only go up to 9, like if you would go higher. But if you don't, you take as many successes as you get. So at 6, you shouldn't be feeding.
But that has a problem. That has the problem in its own right. If you're in that middle ground, that makes you open to heroes, right? So
right. Yeah. So right. So basically what you should do is spend down to 3 and then feed up higher.
Right.
Or just use the rules for family dinner and bypass the feeding system entirely, because family dinner is stupid.
Don't even... Yeah, okay. Is that where we start to get... Are we now onto the point where we have to talk about how Beast interacts with other supernaturals?
Well, I
And
guess I
what
should
I
finish
think
up
I think
talking
we're to the
about
point where we
slumbering.
get to talk about that.
Anyway, carry on, Matt. You're going to finish off something else.
Yeah, slumbering.
Oh yeah.
Like the
Okay.
slumbering condition, um, your beast powers turn off. You turn into a normal human. You stop needing to spend satiety just on a daily basis, and you are normal. The only way to get your powers back is to get a point of bashing or lethal in one of your last 3 health boxes, or collapse a chamber in your lair.
Hmm.
But it's like to actually get up to gorge, to get up to slumbering without being able to use family dinner, you need to do something freaking terrible to somebody. Like I do not see how a beast could ever think of themselves as a good person, considering the rules for feeding.
Yeah. But they're not people, so it doesn't matter.
Right, but then why would someone want to play these characters?
It's, so much of
What
it comes off as you say, it's a lot of revenge, power, wish fulfillment against your um, uh, against your aggressors in life, whether they actually did harm you or not and abuse you or not before you became a beast, or if you've made up in your head, because there's a possibility for that. You've just damaged yourself by being too caught up in yourself.
Well, and that's the thing that the game goes over too, and something I wish the game spent more time on is that beasts bring their own prejudices into determining their the way they're going to feed. Like
Mm,
a beast who was picked on as a child is probably going to feed on bullies. They're going to perpetuate the cycle because that's how people work. Like beasts are human even though they're not. Like they determine what they want to do based on their own experiences. It's just now they don't have a moral compass.
yeah, and of course they're allowed to do it because they're teaching a lesson, apparently.
Supposedly, but they don't have to if they don't
No.
care. Like the only thing that enforces the need of beasts to teach lessons is the very flimsy rules on beast society.
Yes. Yes.
And they basically amount to the old geek social fallacies, which are these are your friends. They can do whatever they want because they're your friends until they do something so bad that it makes the rest of you look bad. Then you have to shun them and make them change their ways.
Mm. Which is terrible when you consider the way people take Beast as an analogy for various ostracized and slighted and abused groups in society, because it's basically saying, oh, you suddenly come into power, understanding of what you are, and then in return you're going to inflict abuse on your previous abusers.
Right. The idea that, because that was a problem with Beast's early development, was the idea that you are playing stand-ins for the LGBT community, for people who came out as kids, for the smart people who were bullied because they weren't athletic enough. Like
Yeah,
you are playing all of these people who had a really tough time growing up, but have now been told, no, you're great. In fact, you're better than great. You are the most special person who has ever existed. Take out all of your frustration on the people who picked on you as a kid.
mm,
So the other part of that is, since you didn't really have anybody that you could get along with growing up, now everybody else has to like you because the game rules say. Let's talk
mm.
about kinship.
Talk about what?
Kinship, the in-universe justification for why the other supernatural creatures like them so much.
Gotcha.
Go on, Matt. This is just such a wonderful section.
All right. So, the idea that the book puts forth is that either all other supernatural creatures in the world were descended in some way from beasts, either literally or figuratively, or beasts have a connection to this mere concept of supernatural horror, and therefore have a connection to all other supernatural creatures.
Except for demons.
Except for demons for reasons.
Yeah.
But the way that works is everybody automatically has, like, all supernatural creatures have a better than normal perception of beasts. Vampires, werewolves, changelings, Prometheans, sin eaters, mummies, fetches, inhuman spirits all start at least friendly. Mages, psychics, ghosts, and slashers. Slashers start off at least what's not hated, the one above that.
Neutral, whatever, yeah.
Average.
Whatever. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so so everybody at least likes beasts, unless the beast shows up and kills their dog or something. Unless the beast does something that would normally set a person to hostile, they are friendly or average with them.
Yeah.
Beasts, in character, beasts don't really, they know that they are friendly with people, but they aren't really aware of the mechanical implications of it, and neither are the other creatures. It's just, this guy shows up and you like him for some reason. And since beasts are connected to them on some kind of weird paranormal level, beasts can feed when they feed. Through a thing called family dinner.
This is my favorite thing that I've read in the game.
If a beast accompanies a vampire out on a feeding run...
No. If a beast is watching as a vampire hunts or feeds or whatever, that's all it takes. He can just stand in the background and watch.
Mm-hmm. The vampire doesn't even need to be aware of it. But, yeah, if the beast... if it requires stalking, if it requires actual feeding, consumption of something through their supernatural power, and the beast has the family ties merit with them, the beast can get up to 3 satiety from each instance of a family ties feeding.
Yeah.
And they don't have to roll for it, it just happens, and they never have to go up to 10 unless they don't want to.
Which, I mean, it's just so... It's so easy. Yeah, it destroys the whole mechanics of feeding that you've just talked about. The regular manner. It's just pointless then.
Yeah, it's the idea of it being easy to feed at low health, at low satiety, and harder to feed at high satiety, and the fact that you need to do something terrible to actually eke out that last bit of hunger if you need to go up higher, doesn't exist, because the game specifically also says that fusing family dinner to feed doesn't leave a mark on the primordial dream.
Yeah.
You don't attract hunters, you don't attract heroes if you stay at high satiety through family dinner. You can just bypass the single point of conflict the entire game has.
Okay. So I found the way that you play this game, and you make it interesting. You play this game as a Vampire the Requiem game, except for you are the reason that vampires are allowed to just hunt down all these college kids.
What do you mean?
I mean, you play the beast who has the family ties with vampires, right? And all you do all day, all night long, because not all day, is you follow behind these vampire hunting parties who are just chasing down poor visitors to town and murdering them and eating them in the streets. And you are the reason that no one ever shows up to stop this. You are the reason Sunnydale exists.
Yeah, okay, I see it that way. You're the one that kills Buffy, right? Okay. Christ.
Well, no, and the other thing that's kind of hilarious about this whole ordeal is that heroes, all of the heroes' powers, only work on beasts. If you're friends with a werewolf,
You're
Werewolves can
screwed,
just
yeah.
kill a hero in one shot. Like there's one of the fiction examples in here is of a beast getting completely jobbed by a hero, and a vampire walks in and just rips his head off.
Can we also, because we talked about the whole family ties thing and family resemblance, can we just say how messed up this is for changelings? Because, right, the only reason a changeling is the way it is because they were taken away, they were stolen away, kidnapped by the True Fae, taken to Arcadia. Along the way through the hedge, their soul is ripped apart, and it's only by eventually escaping Arcadia and all the weirdness and abuse and basically how they were used by the True Fae are they then changed. And as they come back through the hedge, do they eventually, get something back that's almost like their soul? It's kind of held together by the power of the weird. And then these beasts come along and are taken advantage of the fact that you were screwed over by the True Fae. In some respects, because the beasts themselves are not unlike the True Fae, because both the True Fae and beasts get a whole lot out of abusing people in nightmares. That's just so weird. It's like going, oh, you were abused as a child by your daddy, and guess who looks like daddy? Me. But that's why we get on.
Well, no, like the rules in
No.
here state that changelings are less human than slashers and ghosts. Changelings count as supernatural creatures, whereas mages, ghosts, and slashers count as almost human.
Yeah.
Also, the only example of a changeling being given a voice in either the fiction anthology or the book itself is a changeling who was found by a beast when they got back through the hedge. The beast killed his replacement.
His fetch, yeah.
His fetch. And then the changeling saw the beast feeding for the first time and was like, oh god, you're one of them. You take them to the beast. Like, oh no, I don't kill them. I just fuck them up. And the changeling's like, oh, okay, that's fine.
Oh, that's cool, yeah. Makes perfect sense.
And also, like, the thing where it gets weird with beasts is that, obviously, beasts are taking advantage of the fact that these supernatural creatures, so changelings, have been changed into a monster of some form. Whereas, like, that's almost anathema, because, like, changelings are constantly having to make the choice of, well, if they don't use their powers that they've got, they can't make their life and can't really reconstruct their life as best as they can. But also, if they use their powers too much and become too powerful, a changeling becomes one of the True Fae. So you can quite happily see a beast going, yeah, you go feed on glamour, I'll feed away and watch you, like the creepy guy that sits in the back of a place wanking off, watching people have sex in a group sex place, because that's what beasts seem to me like that. They kind of just sat there in the corner. And as the changeling's getting more powerful, they're going, yeah, you do that. It's like the beast is pushing a changeling to become the very thing they hate and escaped from.
Let's talk about Promethean, since
Oh,
you set it up
yeah.
so nicely.
Yeah, let's talk about Promethean then.
Now, okay, so I see what you're saying, Chris, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but is that not kind of the point of beasts? They make others around them more beastly, more horrible. They make things worse.
Yeah, well, that's why. But then I think that's why there's no reason I can find to like them as a character, because I can't connect on them. Almost every other game line, you're trying to reconnect in some way or retain in some way part of your humanity. A vampire is trying to remain human, or at least appear so, and they still have their soul. It's just obviously the beast is riding along. Mages obviously deal with hubris, and by falling to hubris they're less than human. Werewolves, they have to keep a balance between the wolf spirit and their soul, and that's the whole point of the game line. But they're still, are human to a greater extent than beasts anyway. Changelings, they've got a patchwork of their soul held together. Prometheans are actively working along milestones to crystallize their
to become a real boy.
to become a real boy. Mummy, they're trying to remember what it was, gain their memories of their humanity, because remember they start with low memory and it increases as the game goes on, and that has all manner of connotations as they remember the actual truth of why they are slaves to the judges. And have I missed the game line? Geist, you've got the balance between, much like in Werewolf, but in this time you've got the ride-along is a ghost, the Geist, and you're trying to keep the border between the living and the dead.
How about
They're
Slasher?
And slashers are actively, as they do more and more monstrous things, they become less human. And a demon is making a patchwork cover by stealing people's souls in essence. Whereas a beast has quite happily gone, I've lost it, either through their own free will or not, and quite happily accept they're a monster. I don't have any reason to sympathize with them. They're horrible, horrible creatures.
Beasts are inhumanity's cheerleaders. They
Yes.
want you to be as monstrous as they know you can be. Why would a werewolf, a Promethean, or a changeling want to associate with them?
So let's go with the Promethean angle of why you said.
Okay, so here's my answer to that question that Matt just posed. I can't speak for Prometheans because I'm not super familiar with that game line, but why would a changeling and why would a werewolf want to associate with them? Because they speak to the darker nature. Because they speak to the glue of the weird that holds the changeling soul together, the dark, the horrible, the nightmare. They speak to the primal wolf nature. They are the bad that the others are trying to overcome.
Right, but the problem is that if a werewolf has a beast around and the beast is hanging around and feeding on the things, they're going to make the spiritual resonance of the place really fucking terrible. There's going to be fear spirits all over the place. There's going to be predation spirits. The neighborhood is going to become a worse place because the beast is there, and the werewolf will be able to see it.
But it gives the werewolf something to do. Don't werewolves get societal honor or whatever it is in this version for beating up the bad guys, the Bane spirits and the monsters?
Yes, which is why they would get lots of honor for killing
they're
the
playing
beast.
Gauntlet with the beasts. The beasts are the little spawn points in Gauntlet where all the little monsters come out, and all they gotta do is get the little monsters, and they get all this experience.
Stop feeding! Get out of your lane!
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about Promethean. And to wit, the Beast fiction anthology, The Primordial Feast, actually has a story where beasts interact with Promethean. Spoiler alert, it ends badly for the Prometheans.
Yes, go on then. This is great.
Alright, so the beast in question is an Ashmaki nemesis who hates it when people lie. Said nemesis assumes that since these Prometheans are acting there's a Promethean character in here who finishes her journey and becomes human. And the other Prometheans are like, well, at the one hand, she was our friend and now she's human and we want to be a part of her life. But on the other hand, we can't be a part of her life because she has no idea who we are and we might ruin whatever good thing she's got going.
Yeah.
The beast says, oh, no, she's not human, she's a monster. I hate the fact that she's lying, and my horror wants to feed on her. So the beast goes into her nightmares. Like, first of all, the beast intentionally starves herself so her horror will go out and feed on its own. So she has a bit of plausible deniability that she isn't actively doing. Yeah.
That's fucked up.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just not feeding so much today. And it's like, yeah, but she's having horrible nightmares. Like, well, it's not my fault. Do. And when the other Prometheans actually call the beast out on this, the beast goes, well, fuck it, and goes and kidnaps her and drags her into her lair and tortures her for nights on end, trying to turn her back into a Promethean. A hero notices this and goes to, actually intervene. The Prometheans get there about at the same time. And since the Prometheans know that the hero isn't going to really call a question between the beast and whatever she's doing, the Prometheans stop the hero. Well, look, one of the Prometheans stays behind to stop the hero, while the other one goes on to try and find her friend. And like the hero manages to fight past the Promethean and gets to the beast and tries to kill it. But then the other Promethean that stayed behind stabs the hero through the chest and kills her. And the beast is like, "Oh yeah, that's great, awesome. Now let's bring our friend back by torturing her." And the Promethean who killed the hero goes dark mode, picks up the gun, and empties the entire clip into the beast's head.
And rightly so. Fucking
I thought
hell.
you said it didn't end well for the Prometheans. That sounds like a fantastic ending. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's a great ending where it's a perfect example of how beasts are not great player characters. They're wonderful antagonists. Don't get me wrong. On the basis of what they are, they're great antagonists. The complete no. Anyway.
Are they supposed to be an antagonist class?
No, they're supposed
Like,
to be
for
the
instance,
crossover-friendly class.
Yeah. Yeah.
But every example, I mean, Matt, you've read through the anthology, and the examples you've picked out and things. Like, there's the one with the vampires, and even about the whole what was it with was it someone getting killed? Yeah, go with that.
The first two stories in the book, which you assume would be the time when you want to put your best foot forward and make the game sound as great as possible. The first one is a beast gaslighting her abusive mother, dragging her into the primordial dream, killing her, and then setting up her mother's new boyfriend to take the fall. And the only reason she feels bad about it is because her father disapproves. It's like, "Dad, but she was mean to you too. Why weren't you happy that I murdered her?" And it's like, "I don't want to talk to you anymore." The second story is a beast killing another beast because he's the abusive father of one of his music students. And he's just been indiscriminately murdering people across the United States. And he needs to be taught the proper way to feed and how to teach people. It's not a bad thing that he's been murdering people. It's that he's been indiscriminately murdering people and making his daughter feel afraid. Therefore, he has to die. Like, the only reason the beast intervenes is because he is friends with the guy's daughter.
Hmm.
And there's a couple of different stories. Some are much better written than others. There's a really good one about we haven't even talked about inheritances yet.
Yeah.
Shit.
There's that one though with the vampires where is it not a bit of flavor text in the book, or is it actually in the anthology where one vampire, the beast kills the other beast's sister, and the vampire's left looking on, going like, "Why aren't you?"
Oh, that's in the book. That's the example of the vampire character, is that the vampire is like friends with this entire beast. I can't remember what they're called, brood, and like one of the beasts, like while he's feeding, kills another beast's sister, and the vampire's like, "Well, I expected them to have a really big blow up because they were lovers, but now they don't like each other anymore." And then he killed her sister, so I was expecting some kind of big fight. But no, she's totally okay with it. What the fuck is wrong with these people?
Yeah.
Like, a vampire is saying, "What the fuck is wrong with you? You screwed up at some point."
So wait. Maybe now I get it. Maybe these are the Chronicle of Darkness version of Dexter or Hannibal. I understand we already have Slasher. I get that.
Put forth as an example is that they were Dexter. Like, they're the kind of people who do terrible things. Like, you could make Dexter as a great beast, someone who does horrible things to horrible people because he knows he's a horrible person, but wants to make the world a better place. But that would require Beast to acknowledge that they are horrible people. And also, Dexter never made Dokes into the bad guy, whereas if Dexter was a beast, Dokes would be like raping people repeatedly left and right and doing horrible things because he has to be the bad guy.
Clearly not read the books. You have
I haven't read the books. I've only seen the TV show.
Okay.
So, beasts spend all this time making people's lives terrible. What is a beast endgame? That would be inheritance. And the thing is that all three of there's three different kinds of inheritance. All of them result in something horribly monstrous and inhuman. And it's like, this is the only goal for Beast to pursue. So even if a Beast is being a nice person, like if a Beast wants to be a genuinely good person and try to limit their impact on humanity, they are forever prohibited from actually attaining Beast's endgame.
Well, if their end game is to be horrible to humanity and they're not being horrible to humanity, that kind of makes sense, right?
Right, but the game also goes on at length about how beasts are good for humanity, and they do good things for them. But, like, it's a horrible game. I mean, there is so much that is wrong about this game that has been wrong since the beginning. It has been there since its inception. Everybody pointed out that it was a horrible idea, and they gently whitewashed it with some good things over the top. If you look at it from a distance, it seems okay, but when you look closely, you can still see all the blood underneath it because it was a really thin coat of white paint, and everybody who knows what was wrong with it in the first place can just look and see and feel justified that it's still there. Because the way inheritance works is the ultimate end goal is known as the merger, or not the merger, the incarnation, where you become something greater than what you are. How do you do this, you ask? One of the ways, and the preferred way, is to utterly destroy a hero. You don't have to kill them, but you have to defeat them, and they cannot even touch you. You have to take them apart bit by bit, show them that they were wrong to ever oppose you in the first place, and that you are great and awesome. By doing so, you and your horror fuse together into one gestalt whole that is basically a plot device in flesh form. But if you don't want to actually go through all that trouble, there are two lesser inheritances that you can achieve. There's one known as the merger, where you pull your horror into your own body and exist as a soulless monster in the real world. Like, you become... Like, the example character is a guy who basically was just pissed off at his life and decided he didn't want to be human anymore. So he basically he destroyed his lair, took his soul into himself, and became a predator in the real world because killing people was easier. Or you can undergo the retreat, which is also the only one that can happen by accident. If you die while your soul is slumbering, it just fucks off into the primordial dream. It's like, well, whatever, I'm done.
That kind of sounds like the best possible ending for the game to me. Am I wrong?
Well, supposedly, now that your horror no longer has a human consciousness, it's free to do whatever the hell it wants.
But at least it's being honest to itself and not having this, oh, but it's just my horror doing the horrible things. I'm not doing it.
Right. Well, that's the thing is, like, in two cases, you become an NPC because you no longer have any sort of human consciousness, and the other one, you basically become one of the most powerful creatures in existence. But
which
then it's like
also makes you an NPC.
But the thing is that you become a myth, and if someone can change your myth, you stop being an incarnate until you reclaim your myth. It doesn't actually describe how you do either of those things, but it says that it can happen.
Changing your myth, that sounds a bit like either a mage or a changeling screwing around with fate.
Yeah. But, like, one of the powers of the incarnate is to make heroes stop being heroes. Like, you just flip a switch and they lose all their powers and become human again because you show them how wrong they were.
But wait, I thought heroes were not human. They were born heroes.
No,
is that a holdover from the previous version of the game where you make them heroes?
Heroes are human. They're just born heroes. They still have an integrity stat, they still have a soul, but they're just wrong because they think that they should oppose beasts. And in reality, beasts are helpful to humanity because that's what the game says.
Mm-hmm.
No, I should just read the rule for you for how this thing works. Okay. Heroes might still seek the beast out, but they cannot place anathema on her, and the hero's power of heroic tracking is of no use. The beast incarnate can remove the hero's gifts, granting him clarity and showing him exactly who he is in the scheme of things. An interloper, an intruder in a story that never was his. With a simple touch, the beast shows the hero that no matter how terrifying the nightmare, it is not his place to end it. How smug and self-righteous is that paragraph?
To be fair, one of the heroes is a dude in a trilby, so I think that guy might need to be shown.
Yes, but that's a blanket statement against all beasts.
Yeah.
And because the game says that all heroes are terrible people, I guess that's okay, but it's a self-perpetuating cycle that pisses me off. Heroes are wrong because heroes have to be wrong, because otherwise the game would make no sense.
Because otherwise we're the bad guys.
Right. There's no reason for heroes to exist because you can avoid messing around with them. Even if you're, the nicest beast in the world, if a beast nearby is a terrible person, they can attract a hero, and that hero can find you. Because they're NPCs, they're plot devices. The storyteller will use a hero as they see fit. Why even bother trying to be a nice person? There is so much about this game that makes no goddamn sense. The only motivation to teach lessons and to be a nice person is because the game says that it should be a motivation. There is nothing mechanical that actually interacts with that in any way, since you no longer can create heroes by feeding badly. Heroes just exist. They are literally NPCs that should not be sympathetic, because if they are, the game breaks down.
Hmm. I have nothing really more to add to that. Okay, where do we want to go next with this? I mean, we've been through a lot. The storytelling chapter, and that's skipping past all the example settings which exist in this.
There's only one example setting that I really want to touch on, and that's Vancouver. Because Vancouver has implications that I really do not like.
Go for it.
I'll have to look it up, because I didn't check the page number on here.
I'm trying to look for it now. What's the title of the section? Do you remember what it was called?
Here it is, A Serpent's Tooth, I think. Yep. Okay, the idea behind the Vancouver setting is that there was this myth in the local Indian tribes about this great monster that existed in dreams, that also existed in the sea and did horrible things to them. But the local Namtaru had no real ties to it in any way. So the local not Ugalu, the
Makara?
No, the Makara had no ties to it, and so the Shadow Beast guys.
Yeah.
I can't remember their name. Anyways, one entire family of beasts basically declared pogrom on another family of beasts and tried to wipe them all out. As stated within Beast, the book, this is the first time ever mentioned of beasts having any kind of organization along those lines. Anyways, at when they were expanding the Vancouver's Cleveland Dam, they accidentally uncorked something, and that flooded the entire local primordial dream, and now Makara are super powerful. In fact, they're so powerful, they have their own nightmare, which lets them remove everybody else's supernatural powers.
Nice.
They can just turn off a werewolf's ability to shapeshift. Do you want to know how they resolve that condition?
I definitely want to know how they resolve that condition.
They have to admit that the beast is right and has the right to take away their powers, and then take the beaten down trait. To resolve the beaten down trait, you have to spend a point of willpower and admit that the beast is right again.
Wow.
Like, it also says that it's only available to the Leviathans of Vancouver, and it does not function outside of Vancouver. But so the answer to that is, okay, I guess I'm never going to adventure in Vancouver, because that's bullshit. Like, they used it to bring all the local vampires and werewolves under their heel, because they are clearly the most powerful and biggest and baddest monsters, and no one can oppose them. So now all the vampires and werewolves of Vancouver work for them.
Hmm.
So why would you not just leave town?
You would.
I mean, I would.
Yeah.
Say, oh, you guys are right. Let me pick up my teeth. I'm going to head on out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the storytelling chapter isn't very good.
No. I saw nothing really about concepts for Chronicles. It was more, there was a bit of how you structure stories, wasn't there? But otherwise,
Like, the one thing that they were extremely, extremely insistent on is that you don't set it up like a Campbellian epic. Beasts shouldn't actively oppose heroes. Heroes should just be a thing that happens, and you kill them, and then get on with the regular plot.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that. You can't have your entire book be set up as an inversion of the Campbellian epic and then ignore it entirely. Another example they have in here is that you should eschew common structures. You know what you should emulate? Rashomon. You should have a 4-act structure, and in the 3rd act, you should have your player characters play vampires. Don't tell them how it's supposed to be related to the beast, just tell them that it is. And then in Act 4, show that they are connected. It doesn't say how you should do that, or even what kind of example plot you should use, just that they should be related. Like, you can't do that. You have to give an example. You can't just say, introduce all of these plot threads, then resolve them at the end.
Well, they gave an example. Watch Rashomon. It's probably a better use of your time.
Yeah. That should be the subtitle instead of the Primordial. Beast. Watch Rashomon.
right. Is there anything more to go through? I mean,
How about Bryce? Do you have any questions? Because both of us have read the book, and we can probably answer them.
I say I read the book to a point. There's a point I think I've tried getting through it twice, and you just get to a point where you kind of get a bit tired reading it in some places.
Yeah, I've read, the first several chapters of the book, and they sound like they have a decent idea, a very not horrible idea that could go somewhere.
But wasn't the first chapter of the book the one that's had the most revision between the version we have now and the initial version at the Kickstarter?
Yes, the first chapter is the one where they talk about how beasts are meant to teach lessons and not feed, and that feeding without teaching lessons is a terrible thing, and that beasts are created by the devouring, they are not born. But then you get to chapter 2, and there's a sidebar that says actually beasts are special and born and not created. And also, beasts really shouldn't teach lessons because that's bullshit. Like, there's a sidebar that says this is all a lie, this is stupid, beasts should just be able to be who they are.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question to each of you, would you play this game?
No. Not
Is
if
there
it's current
anything?
incarnation.
Is there anything that could be done, could be changed in this game to make you want to play this game without saying, yeah, let's just play them as bad guys in our hunter game?
I will say I have an idea of how I'd use bits from it, but it would require gutting a whole load. It would mostly refocus on the Campbellian cycle and inverting that. And the crossover would be less about Beast going, oh, hey guys, I'm your friend. I didn't mean to do it, but I'm your friend, and more about how, and it would fit in with why beasts and demons don't work together. So I have more of a Gaia theory approach to Beast. In other words, it kind of makes Beast more like old school werewolf, to be honest.
Well, that I mean,
But I'm not going to say to do that because it requires so much work, and no one should. If you shouldn't have to buy this book, and for all these reasons, then go, well, I shouldn't have bought the book. I could have just used all the bits and parts from all the other game lines and made something better. Because also, a lot of Beast, when you go through it, you can start seeing where little bits have come from the other game lines to make it more, which is why possibly it's more like a crossover game. I don't know. And also, if you want a better crossover game, play Geist, because everything creates ghosts. So Geist is the best crossover game.
or play Werewolf, because they just introduced an entire book about crossover called The Pack.
Or play
Okay,
Mage.
Matt. Matt, would you play Beast the Primordial?
If the game owned up to its monstrosity, if the game admitted that it was all bullshit, if the game didn't let heroes be heroic, maybe. But the amount of effort that would go into doing that, this game isn't worth it. It's and acknowledging that the game has something good in it isn't something I'm prepared to do. It's bad. I mean, and like Chris mentioned, and we didn't go over, demons hate beasts. And Demon was the last game that the writer of this game, Black Hat Matt, worked on before he made Beast. The fact that his own, pocket characters hate each other is kind of surprising to me. He does not want beasts and demons to interact because I think Beast would bring Demon down. He doesn't want the game that Demon is to be brought down by association with Beast. But everybody else can get shit on.
Well, didn't he also work on Changeling the Lost?
Well,
No?
yeah, but he wasn't developer for that. That was Jess Hartley, and developer now for David Hill's developer for Changeling Second Edition.
Mm.
Yeah, he worked on Demon with Rose Bailey, but he himself wrote Heirs to Hell, which is a fantastic book. So it's I know he can do good things. I don't know why he did Beast like this, but he did, and he shouldn't be forgiven just because he was able to do something good.
Yeah, because I think the problem with Beast is there's a lot of problematic connotations in there when you get into the whole thing about how it relates to abuse and neglect and bullying, and how beasts and the perpetuation of that, and how that's a good game to play, and how people deserve what happens to them. I think, isn't there some sort of example, Matt, where a beast about the hunger for prey is chasing down someone and making them learn they've got to run faster, but if you catch them, if the fat kid can't run away quick enough, well, he had it coming, is really messed up.
Well, there's the example feeding in this game, and it's got one part that was changed from the Kickstarter chapter. In the Kickstarter, it was the little old lady example character, which is its own stupid thing. Catching a kid stealing candy from other kids, and she tracks him down to his house, poisons the candy, waits until he's throwing up, puts a bag over his head so he aspirates on his vomit, then tosses him down to the ground, uses a bunch of nightmares on him, realizes that he lost a point of integrity, and then turns his house into a horrible nightmare lair. But people were like, that's a little kid, that seems a little bit harsh. In the final copy, he's no longer a high schooler, he's a frat boy, so it's okay to be mean to him.
So is Beast the Primordial wish fulfillment?
Yes.
On the part of the author, or perhaps some group that the author feels that he is associated with?
God, yes.
Yes.
When people pointed out that heroes were sympathetic and that making heroes be the victims of beasts was kind of made heroes seem more heroic. His response to that was to compare his detractors to men's rights activists going, not all men, and that they should really think about themselves because heroes are the bad guys because he says they are the bad guys. And since he is the writer, that is the way it should be. Like, I can read through this book and see lots of places where the authorial voice comes through. And when beasts feed, the moment when a beast actually gets satiety is when the human gives up and admits that the beast is right. Like, I think that is the crux of this game. Give up and admit I'm right.
No matter how wrong the beast actually may well be.
No, it's yeah, because if a beast comes across somebody in an abusive relationship, depending on the proclivities of the beast, there are multiple lessons they could teach. Like a Anakim predator could be like, look, this person's bad for you. I'm going to show you how bad it could be. You should get away.
Yeah.
Whereas a Namtaru tyrant would be, no, this is the best you're going to get, and it could be a lot worse. Just put up with the abuse. And as far as Beast is concerned, those are both valid lessons, because it's up to the Beast doing it to determine what actually is true. And forcing the human to admit that the Beast is right.
And there are no mechanics and no guidance on what actually is a good lesson and how it actually, how you fulfill that. Yeah.
It's up to the storyteller's discretion.
Which means then, if you presented the game, if the game is very caters for revenge fantasy, then that really brings into question, if it's really up to the storyteller and the players what those lessons are, you're just going to get tons and tons of. I think you're just going to get tons and tons of revenge fantasy lessons. They had it coming. They all had it coming.
Insert clip from Carrie here.
Well,
yes.
I was going to ask if the one-armed guy from Arrested Development is one of the beasts, the ugly person stereotype beast. That's why you always leave a note. That's the lesson he's teaching you. The fact that it terrifies you for no reason.
No, there's a beast in here who tracks down someone because he didn't leave a big enough tip, and terrifies him to teach him that other people matter and he should leave bigger tips.
You and your tipping system. You see, that wouldn't even work in the UK. We don't need to tip because we actually give people at least a decent wage. Anyway,
$2.50 an hour is more than enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Christ.
Clearly one of the
Is that where we're going to leave it? Because I don't think
it is.
Carrying on any further will just... there's nothing more really to say, I think, criticism-wise at this moment. There are other books coming out for it, so... But, I mean, again, let's be honest, we don't get free copies of these books. These books we get through, paying for them or backing them and then being disappointed on the backing. So even us actually wanting to bother to read and review the player's guide that's apparently coming out for this book or for this game or whatever, for my part, the likelihood of that is not going to happen. I think that borders on sadomasochism, really.
Which is apparently right up my alley because I do review this, because I review this shit willingly for some stupid reason.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to at least read the Reconstruction era Beast thing, because there's no way that's not going to be a train wreck. Like, it's either going to be an absolute train wreck or it's going to redeem the line.
Isn't that a stretch goal, wasn't it, for Beast? So I'm going to get that anyway. So, oh well, there we go.
But no, if you guys take nothing else away from this review, do not buy this game.
Yeah.
Do not reward them, because it does not deserve it.
Go buy Mage. Go buy Vampire 2nd Edition.
Go buy Demon.
Go buy Changeling 20th Anniversary Edition, coming soon to a drive-through RPG near you.
And I have to say at this point, because as I said, I'm about to run Geist. I'm looking forward to Geist Second Edition because Dave Brookshaw's doing it. So Dave does great things. Also, Dave hasn't let me down. So I haven't looked at Mage Second Edition yet, but I've not heard bad things about that. Anyway, let's move on to the secret frequency and finish this fucking show. And with that.
He took the stairs. I want my mom.
So, I present today for the secret frequency the Pope Lick Monster. Raquel Bain was struck. Is that? Oh, I don't know how I pronounce that. It looks like Rachel, but it's Raquel. Yeah, whatever. Was struck by a train while seeking a creature that is said to lure people onto the tracks. A cross between a man, a goat, and a sheep. And the bizarrely named Pope Lick Monster allegedly lives underneath the Norfolk Southern Railway trestle over a small creek in Louisville, Kentucky. Local legends claim that the creature leads trespassers to their doom by hypnotizing them into walking onto the tracks where they meet their demise in front of an oncoming train. In this particular case, Bain, who was a tourist with her boyfriend, had been into the area to go on a paranormal tour of the Waverly Hills Sanatorium, but had decided to visit the infamous trestle in an attempt to hunt down the Pope Lick Monster. What happened next remains unclear, but it ended with the couple stranded in the middle of the trestle with a train speeding towards them. Without enough time to reach safety, Bain was struck by the locomotive and killed, while her boyfriend narrowly escaped by dangling over the edge. The police later revealed no evidence of drugs or alcohol or foul play, and the incident follows on from another near miss that occurred on the same trestle 2 years earlier, when an Eastern high school graduate was photographed with his legs dangling over the side. There's also some quote of the Pope Monster didn't get us, but a train almost did. So, how would I use this in the Chronicles of Darkness or World of Darkness? Chronicles of Darkness, perhaps this is a manifestation of a ghost. Of a person that died on the trains, and they look like this weird combination of a man, goat, and sheep because they're a ghost that's been released from the lower depths of the underworld, and while they were there, obviously they became misshapen and twisted. The other option is perhaps this is a way that one of the True Fae goes about stealing people. So the person doesn't die when they get hit by the train. They're actually, at the last moment, taken away into Arcadia, and the body parts you find are just the remains that they've made, kind of like a fetch. The other option is you could think of this as perhaps this is actually all part of some strange occult matrix of the God Machine. So guys, any other ideas how to use this?
Clearly, this is a beast. Teaching the lesson of stay off of the damn bridge.
Yes, I was thinking that is the obvious one. Don't go on train tracks. You'll get run over because that's a primordial.
It is a primal fear that we should all learn.
Ah, yes, the part deep in our collective history when we were run over by trains.
Yes.
Okay, but seriously, for the old World of Darkness, I can definitely see, since it's got all the animalistic features, it could very well be a vampire, because there are the gangrel who have the animalistic features. Although I'm not sure how scary or spoopy the goat sheep man combination might be, but whatever. Perhaps he's trying to lure victims to his little railway bridge that he has over the little shallow creek that he calls a lair, and he will, drink blood from their splattered corpses.
Fair enough.
It could also be a satire out there who is just, wanting to be left alone, live under his little bridge, and have all the fun he wants out there in the wilderness because I can't
You mean
imagine
a
that there's a lot
satyr?
going on. Yes, satyr, sorry.
It's like,
Out there in and around the environs of Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah. Okay.
it could be some kind of horrible amalgam spirit, like a goat, sheep, and a predator of some kind. Like a
Man.
spirit just ate a whole bunch of crap and is now really, really screwed up in the head and wants to kill people. And, for some reason is bound to the train tracks.
Why can't it just be part of how the Magath appears? Because that's the combination spirit, and that actually it possesses the train that does the running over at the last minute. So that's how it feeds. So its one form is the lure, and the other form is this. I'm sure its spiritual reflection would be some giant train with horns and muscles and everything that give it that kind of weird combination. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, but it's probably a beast, which means it should
Probably
probably
beast.
get killed.
Definitely a beast.
Right, if that's everything, if that's all the ideas we've got for it, I
We
mean,
need a man with a trilby to go investigate this bridge.
Hello, my bridge.
milady, it's clearly a man goat sheep.
If I
yeah.
kill this, will you sleep with me?
No one kills like Mr. Trilby. No one slays like Mr. Trilby. With that, I think we're at an end. If you disagree with our review of Beast, please email us at darkerdaysradio@gmail.com. You can tell us we're a bunch of assholes at Twitter at darkerdays. Radio, and that's at Twitter. We have a Facebook page, we have a Google Plus page, we have a blog. The blog is still being filled up with stuff of painting toy soldiers and playing through Kingdom Death, and we'll be blogging about the UK Games Expo. Also, if you want to listen to New World of Darkness stuff, which we won't be reviewing Beast on there for any time soon, is Network Zero, which is a spin-off. There is also, of course, our friends over at Midnight Express that people should go listen to. I can't remember what the most recent episode was, but they've covered certain wonderful werewolf books about Australia, I think. Was that right? I think
I
so.
don't recall them doing Rage Across Australia, but their most recent episode was The Skinner.
Oh, right. Well, that should be a laugh.
Surprising, fantastic. Well, not surprising because they're a great podcast, but it's a great episode.
Yeah. As always, a shout, because they do some good stuff as well, is Full Metal RPG. I think at some point they'll be doing some more World of Darkness, Chronicles of Darkness stuff. Have I missed anything? No. I think that's everything. So that's it. That's your episode of Dark Days Radio. So good night.
Sleep tight and don't let the beasts bite.
Yeah. All right. See you guys.